Ben Marks, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing okay. Just was practice kite surfing for the first time yesterday, so I'm feeling my 40s. Hopefully,
Yeah. What is this? So I always forget. I always mix up like kite surfing and windboarding and all those various like water sports.
yeah. So
That's the one.
kite surfing. I forget how old it is. I think it's like over 10 years old. But basically, you are hooked into like a 10, 12 meter huge kite, and it hooks into
Uh,
a harness around your waist, and then you're strapped to a
right.
board. Or if you're really good, you just take a surfboard out. And if you're really good, you take out a hydrofoil, like a foil board, and you're
I did hear
actually
about hydrofoiling
it's
recently.
cool.
Yeah.
And the latest thing out here now, my neighbors are into is wing. Basically, they just hold something. It looks like almost like a hang gliding wing, but they're just holding it, and they're
Okay.
on a hydrofoil, so they're out of the water, and they're just catching the air with the wing and like pumping
Okay.
with their legs. It's really strange.
People are just continually inventing like random things to do in the water, on land, like hoverboard, like it's
We are
always
we are this bored as a species. Well, I mean, if you look at the various and sundry ways that we figured out to like conduct commerce across the planet, it's no surprise that we're diversifying everything else.
right, right. This man knows how to make a segue into commerce.
I'm always good at well, so my whole life I've always just basically gone on tangents of tangents. So really it's a matter of self-preservation that I can occasionally get things back on track.
I love it. I love it. So, how is everything going overall? Magento commerce, Magento community, all things Magento. Big picture, 20,000 foot overview.
Oh, it's all fine. I don't even know why I have a job.
I think
No, I mean it's well, people we stay evolving how to do commerce. I think I maybe even said on like Mage Talk before, I think it really all started when once we got testing, user testing, split testing, multivariate testing, and that just encouraged us to figure out what works better, what gets more customers, what gets customers back, what gets more, higher average order value, and then like so we started finding the things that worked, but then those like immediately become the new consumer expectations, and
right.
it's just this ever tightening spiral where we're just constantly having to push things forward. I mean, I suppose there's some sort of like Moore's law equivalent of commercial optimization, and maybe not unlike Moore's law will hit a limit at some point. Maybe we already have.
That's super interesting. I don't know if I've ever had that thought before. So a Moore's law equivalent of essentially A/B testing optimization commercially would
Yeah,
mean that you are
like
doubling.
how well, I mean, I wouldn't even want to hazard a guess at the rate, but essentially you think about how commerce has evolved since since let's take a convenient time frame since Magento 1 came out, right? 2008.
Mhm.
You think about how much it had evolved within a few years, and then evolved a few years later and evolved a few years later. I mean, it's not, it's not a totally self-contained system, right? Because we as a species have a lot of different ways that we like to interact. And so the level of interaction, I mean, the biggest change for commerce, right, was back in 2000 and was it one when essentially
Online payments.
the commercialization, secured browsing, and I did a presentation on this a long time ago, but once commercial activity was allowed on the web, like it was always going to take over, because all you have to do, the better you connect people, and the better they then become at improving those connections. Well, commerce will follow with that.
Yeah.
You know,
It's been all downhill and in some senses all uphill since then.
Yeah, you'd think it'd be a wash. I mean, you could say it's not unlike when, when you get better modes of transportation and you find new paths, like so Silk Road, or the Dutch East Indies, sailing, and all of the nasty nasty things that go along with it. I mean, we still have a lot of the same problems in commerce that we've had for years, whether it's um, abhorrent or even, enslaved conditions for stuff that's being made and sold, and
Right,
people are
right,
just more and more abstracted from it.
right.
It's you could probably say that the commerce metaphor is sadly consistent, and just expands over time.
Mhm.
Wow, we've gone deep fast.
Yeah, I was struggling to wrap my head around that last statement. The commerce metaphor. What are some of the what are some of the more interesting sort of problems in commerce that you're thinking about seeing Magento's working on? Some of the different, I think about some of the different innovation programs that Magento has launched and things like that. Um, what do you think of when you think about, some of those types of topics?
Well, I mean, we're in an interesting space in Magento because, we're open, we're totally flexible, up to the limits of what, the speed at which developers can work and what they can accomplish. So we're one of our, I think probably our biggest challenge is to take a lot of the good intentions that were sort of built, um, into Magento 2. So the
Mm,
customizability, the sort of the robust customizability,
right.
of the platform, it has some uncomfortable edges. I mean, I wish it weren't so, and I,
Bit
and
of a learning curve. There's a bit of a learning curve there. A
right. I mean,
touch.
people want to compare to Magento 1, and I understand the comparison if that's your frame of reference, but I'm not sure that it's a useful comparison because Magento 2 is a different thing and it solves a different problem for different markets, right? I mean, we built something for that market, um, or that sort of that range of market, and and there are complexities there, and
Yeah.
and sort of smoothing out those rough edges is something that we need to do.
It's sort of a deceptive comparison. I mean, the reason people make the comparison is obvious. It's Magento, but I
Yeah.
think, and everybody knows that Magento has matured so quickly as a business, as a community, as an ecosystem. People have gone up market, but then to make the connection to that, the products are, in some ways are very, like you said, different or serve different needs or things like that. Isn't you sort of don't always intuitively realize that. So there's this
Yeah, and that was on us, myself included, or maybe even especially, because
really.
we built. So I don't know that we set to modernize the stack, right? And there, no matter if we'd come out with basically the same thing as Magento 1, but with Magento 2,
Mhm.
uh, if we'd come out with the same thing and we had, I don't know, I lost my train of thought. Damn it. I hate it when my train of thought derails.
I did
Um,
that happens to me about four times a day.
I don't even know why, 'cause it's a point that I've made before, but, so, w what I like to do as a thought experiment, and, I'm not sure to what degree my colleagues would agree with me, but from my perspective, we could have been much clearer about who we were building for and, like, what kind of, like, the when I joined Magento in 2014, they had just done a survey, of open source merchants, and
Mhm,
looking at the kind of, like, what kind of people those people are or
mhm,
were. And so what we found, was that, somewhere between, I think it was up to 60% of the open source install base were people who had done a little bit of, like, maybe WordPress, like they knew a little bit of PHP, and they were able to get up and running with Magento 1. They were basically maxing out their ability to do stuff,
mhm.
and but they got an instance up and running, and some of them built some really cool businesses. Now, some of
Right.
them were able to, like, mature along with that, but then what we knew when Shoplift came around were the tens of thousands of them. They kind of had this instance out there running, but they didn't know to maintain it,
Maintain
how to
it and things.
and so we ended up with this huge problem. So, you look at Magento 2 and it addresses a lot of things. It addresses how much programming changed from 2008 to 2015, it
Right.
addresses, and really the end of 2015, it addresses that cloud computing, like commerce computing, was a thing. It modernized for how PHP developers had learned to work, and we were just unfortunately in the early, or some of the earlier days of changes to how front end development was done.
Yeah.
Um, and so, we were solving for a lot of this technical, this just technical iteration that's always going to be there.
Yeah.
And we weren't introspective enough and then vocal about that
Hmm.
introspection, like what we learned, to be able to tell people like, hey, you know what, we actually think that self-starting like entrepreneur, like that's probably not going to be a personality who, like, that's not going to be a persona in our world going forward. And
Right.
where I like justify that position
Hmm.
is, if you look at the deployment modes that were built for Magento 2, you had default, you had developer, and you had production.
Right.
And default was kind of there in case you didn't have access to, or didn't really know, like, access to your environment, or know any better. And in
Hmm.
reality, like, it just it we that was there as a vestige of the old system. And
Hmm.
it just points to me that it indicates to me that we had not quite realized that we'd built away from that. And
Yeah.
it's okay, but it would have been much better if we had been clear about it for ourselves and clear about it for others. And again, I some of my colleagues, more a bit closer to the development of the core, they might say, hey, no, we knew this, but I think we didn't do. I think as
Hmm.
a company, and me as a spokesperson for the company, I definitely say I didn't do a good enough job realizing that, and then promoting that out to the ecosystem. If that'd be one thing I would go back and change quite a lot. Say like, hey, let's look at it. And then the other thing, of course, that's happened, so this is actually kind of getting back to your question. One of the things that we're adjusting for is, like, the SaaS platforms are all sort of facilitating greater and greater customization, as the really custom, like, on-premise platforms are trying to do things like pass, and put guardrails around how you do stuff. So we have this kind of convergence,
Yeah.
and it's going to be subtle variations at some point, and then broader integrations. Now I think where we're in
Mm.
a really good position is that Adobe is really good, and was very good before they acquired Magento, at um, collecting, and being able to analyze, there's trillions of customer interactions. So Adobe is actually a really huge consumer data collection company, which is something I
Right.
had no idea about until after we were acquired. And then I found out, oh, well, all these, massive multinational brands, they use they use Adobe's marketing platforms, and they use this, essentially, these customer experience platforms. And then what we're doing is we're adding Magento into the mix. And then for us to continue down our path of, like, how, what parts of the market are best served by all of these things together. I mean, I think we can always make the case for Magento in the enterprise, and then we continue to have a host of, I'd say, pretty moderate and modest sized merchants, but just figuring out the balance of what we focus on, going forward. That's an interesting challenge for us.
Yeah. I mean, it's a challenging thing because you're kind of building the train while you're driving it, and the market is changing, and your customer base is changing, and then maybe something that was appropriate for a certain customer base 5 years ago, things shift,
Yeah,
and it's part of business, so it is kind of is what it is,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
and being someone that's so dialed into the community, the open source, sort of side of things, like you feel all of those pain points, and you feel all of those bumps in the road,
yeah,
um,
exactly.
and without an enterprise component, without a business component, it can't, on a business level, it can only go so far without that. So it's a very important part of the overall puzzle. Um,
Yeah. And then in the
And
meantime, we have this whole ecosystem that we are, continue to be interdependent on,
right.
or interdependent with, I think would be maybe the better preposition there. But uh, so we have to consider, like, the things that we focus on. I think one of the things a metaphor that my former manager, Ryan Murden, offered up, was that basically, like, the Magento ecosystem is an iceberg, right? As far as the company goes, we notice, like, we as a company, it's really easy for us to see and pay attention to what's above the waterline. But true of any iceberg, it's like that's just a really small percentage. There's all this stuff underneath,
Mm,
right? So those old facts and figures of the size of the Magento service economy. It's like 5 billion a year, and we were acquired for what we were acquired for, and everyone reported at 10x. So you figure, like, a couple $100 million in revenue, like, as $5 billion ecosystem, like, we were actually not scraping much revenue out of there. But, like, there's, like,
yeah.
all the people who have jobs, and all of the just the headspace and activity and enthusiasm around Magento is all relying on this intermix of, enterprise and open source, and then just, but a lot of it is open source. And so we have to, continue in our transition with this community to figure out, like, what does that partnership, what does that collaboration look like going forward.
Yeah.
It's one of our bigger challenges.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I know that there was the certification sort of integration over
Yeah.
to from the Magento certifications over to Adobe, and I know there was an FAQ that you had tweeted out recently, and I was just curious if there was any TLDRs you wanted to give on that, any things that people should pay attention to, or any, things that
Yeah, we
people
do.
might have missed.
So Adobe has a huge, an entire, like, team dedicated just to certifications, but these are certifications across, like, Adobe products. And so they have their own brand concepts, which explain some of the newer names, which it can be a little confusing if you're coming from from a solely Magento certification world. So the names will be a little bit different, reflect Adobe branding. One of the things that happened was Adobe had this standard policy that, like, your certifications expired every 2 years, and so they had some boilerplate in emails that were going out that stated that, and everyone's like, "Wait, my certification's dead after 2 years," um, and that's not the case. So I did get the word, like, we did get official word from the certification team that they'd done some
Nice,
consulting, and they knew that wasn't tenable for Magento certifications. However, they are looking at, I think the Adobe team was strongly opined that there should be some kind of some way of showing currency. So, like, you know,
totally.
I mean, an example would be I'm a certified, like, Magento 1 super awesome developer from 2011. Like, I
Same
haven't
here.
done
Yeah.
I haven't done Magento development in a long time, so that certification is worth nothing. Now, anytime you post your credential, like, basically anytime you're sharing your credential, you should have been linking to the directory, which is now gone.
Right.
Um, and um, that has the date that you were certified, but there was no way to recertify. Like, I guess you could have retaken the exam, but
Right.
uh,
It wasn't
what
formalized what the process was for.
right. And so what we're doing with certifications going forward is, I think, what we're going to find a way to do some kind of recertification, maybe whether it's like a 2 year delta, like how much, whatever the things that have changed in 2 years or something. Um, just so that people can
Mhm.
show some kind of currency. I mean, if you think about it, this actually, if I think about it from, like, the agency perspective, or even the merchant perspective, like, I want to make sure that it's not just that someone is certified, has attained a certification in the past. It's just that they have kept up with the practice, because development is definitely a skill that will atrophy, especially in commerce. So there is, that's probably one of the biggest things that's come about. And, for sure, we will be seeking input on that. Now, what you have to do if you are if you hold a Magento certification, Magento 1 certifications are going to be migrated. I think we gave ourselves until the end of October for that,
Okay.
because not they're not they're not quite as important. Sorry, I just got to check on the puppy. Um,
Oh yeah, we got to talk
and
about this puppy. I've been
oh
seeing
no,
all
yeah,
the
she might do a
posts.
cameo. I'll have to
Oh,
talk to
that'd be
Radiant.
great.
Um, right. So we have so you have to you basically have to you'll get a notification if you have a Magento 2 certification. You should, I believe, already have received a message from our team that
Mhm.
inviting you essentially to accept your certification in their system. And then
Right.
Adobe has this entire like site where it's a
Mhm.
credential management site. And you essentially you have to create an account there if you don't already have an Adobe account. And
Mhm.
then inside that that area, you'll have full control of your credentials, and you can create the badges, and I want to say they even have dates and stuff. So it's just
Nice.
a little bit different from how it worked at Magento, but functionally should be functionally equivalent. I mean, the only thing that's changed is that there is no longer a directory to reference.
Gotcha. Yeah, so they've formalized some. They have some more formalized programs around managing your certifications, timestamps, date stamps, that kind of a thing. So that's kind of neat to have that in place.
Yeah.
And it's good to get that all kind of clarified. Um, so the dog, your brand new dog, dog
Yeah.
parent.
Oh man, let me see if I can. Hey, little girl.
I know
She
you've been
she
posting a lot about
she
that lately.
loves. I've got wood floors. She loves to curl up like right under the chair, and I'm just so scared I'm gonna
Uh,
roll over her ear or something one day. So hold on.
right.
She's- I'm I'm trying to sleep. That's Millie.
There she
It's like
is.
a teenager who just woke up. Like, mom, dad, put me down. Go she's
So
asleep.
cute. So did you get her as a puppy or
Yeah.
how old is she?
Sorry, girl.
Yeah, yeah, she's a puppy, right?
She is a puppy. So she's 13 weeks old.
Oh
And
God.
so because of the pandemic, like Tracy, my wife, had to she spent a lot of time and went to through about 40 different breeders. I mean, just really looking through and contacting him. And in the end, so we had a
Yeah.
golden for several years. Tracy had her since a puppy, and she died about 5 years ago. And
Mm,
yeah, then we were traveling all the time, so it didn't make sense to get a puppy while we were traveling. But now
right,
that we're
right.
not traveling for the foreseeable future, it was time. We really missed having a companion like that in our life. And
Yeah.
a friend of ours, actually, a good friend of ours, had a breeder in Atlanta in Georgia. And this family's a great family. They did hound dogs
Hmm.
for like a father son, like for like a generation. And I just can't imagine, like, they're hound dogs are so cute, but my gosh, they're loud. And then he said about, I think, several years ago he started doing Goldens. But it's great. The the property is just, it's a proper farm, and like he has his daughter
Nice.
go down and he'd go and play with the puppies. And
Yeah.
um so it's a reputable thing. I mean, we also, we've discussed, it is important to rescue,
Yeah.
but for us, we're fans of the breed, and we want the breed to succeed. And so we got
Yeah.
Millie. And
Yeah.
yeah, we had to pick her up we had to pick her out when she was 2 weeks old. Which, if you've ever met a 2-week old puppy, they're just a little lump of like
No,
of,
the
of
mine was like 4 or 5 weeks, and
yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen a puppy younger than that.
Yeah, I mean, they're just a lump of like closed eyes, fur, and let me just get as close as I can to the other pups or milk. And
Yeah.
uh, and so that was kind of tough, but we ended up with a
Yeah.
great one. I mean, she's a little too bitey. I don't know if you can see the
Oh,
hand
dude, I'm
the
getting
hand trauma.
flashbacks to the
Oh,
puppy phase for me, which was about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. and yeah, they'll bite you, man. They got sharp teeth, and
Needle teeth, needle teeth.
it's
But it's been cool watching her personality. I mean, she's doubled in height and length and in weight in
yeah,
just the space of like 3 weeks. So, I mean, I kind of makes sense that she might be a little mm, agitated and grumpy because, literally,
yeah.
like she loves to do a little sneak attack. Like, I mean, it's not very sneaky because she's right in front of you. But I've got like a 40-second video from like a night or two ago where she's
uh,
she's trying to, do the slow crawl, but
uh,
but she doesn't know day to day like how long her legs are gonna be. So she like has no idea like where her foot's gonna get put down. It's really
right.
funny. It's pretty
It's
cute.
hilarious. We had some friends that we were going to visit, and I didn't realize this, but they breed Goldens, and
Mm.
so we get there with our three kids, and then they had like three or four kids, and then all of a sudden there's like nine like baby Goldens just running all over the place. Like like our kids were hugging them, and it was like I was like,
Yeah,
you're killing me. This is
retrievers make pretty cute puppies. I mean, they don't have a patent on cute puppiness, but Goldens
pretty
especially.
close.
I think
Yeah.
Goldens are pretty damn adorable, and yeah, I would yeah they're great family dog. So
Yeah.
we're looking forward to continuing. She gets daily trips to the beach and just
Nice.
continuing to try and be
Happy
good
doggy.
be good parents to her. She's asleep again.
Yeah. That's nice. So, and then we started, I think, talking about this in one of our previous initial recordings. So we had a
Yeah.
couple attempts, but your tweet on kind of getting out of the go mode. You travel like crazy. Coronavirus quarantine, status, like for some people it's miserable. For all of us, it's miserable on some level. But then also you can sort of find. It seems like you found like some really nice healthy rhythms that have been great for you. And so like
Well,
how's the whole coronavirus thing going?
yeah. I mean, I feel guilty as hell because it's been really good for us. I mean, we love being home. We live in a great place to be home. We
Yeah,
actually like in the early days when the island tried to shut down because we just figured the whole country would shut down and we wouldn't be kind of where we are today.
yeah,
Um, and I'm sorry, I'm stuck on a barrier island at the beginning of like sort of the end of spring, beginning of summer, and
yeah,
that was really cool. And so it was just nice to be home. Obviously, the social restrictions were really strange because whenever I was home, it was always good to go out to. I know several of my friends out here. They own bars and it's great to catch up with people. And obviously, we were not doing much of that, but so we were able to buy a golf cart. I mean, it's like financially, nothing's changed because we're eating in. I'm not, there's not the additional overhead of like Tracy's travel. Um, and it I mean, I feel super fortunate that this is my lot. And Adobe's been spectacular um, as employers, both in the pandemic and then in the current social justice moment. Um, Adobe has been the leaders have been openly introspective and um, and supportive, and in fact, even just last week, announced another sort of employee positive change just based on feedbacks from they're doing surveys every so often just to see how people are doing. Um, so it's been pretty remarkable so far. And then the economy taking the hit that it has. I mean, we've been in the position to to direct money to certain places just to try and help balance things out and get people through, because there's a lot of like Charleston is a very food and bev oriented town.
mm-hmm,
Tracy, like when she's home, she'd pick up shifts at a restaurant. She's not right now because the full-time employees need them, but We just one of many restaurateurs that we know personally, and you want to make sure that these places are stood, they provide so much of the fabric, the we of what we like. We want to make sure
Yeah.
that they're still around later on, and want to recognize their contributions. Um, so
That's who
it's
it's
been a
really
really
hitting so hard. I mean, restaurant owners, bar owners,
yeah
and it's like you don't. It's it sounds like, well, okay, they're just restaurants, but that is such a big part of kind of the social fabric.
Yeah, I mean, and there are gonna be plenty of restaurants that were already, I mean, the margins are thin, and they were already probably gonna have some challenges. In downtown Charleston, there's a lot of
Right.
there's a huge student population down there, and, students, they, aren't there, um, haven't been going out, so, there have been a lot of closures, but I think one of the interesting outcomes is gonna be, well, there will likely be, a glut of commercial real estates for both retail and restaurant.
Right.
So the next iteration of restaurants can come up, and I think I'm starting to see reports. A lot of the U.S. cities that have created outdoor dining spaces. Maybe
Yeah.
shut down streets so that restaurants can have at least some square footage. It's usually a small percentage relative to their dining room, but
Yeah. It's
they're
something
able.
at least.
It's something, and they're finding out like, hey, people are actually hanging out and enjoying it, and this is really cool. But that's gonna be another challenge though as the weather starts to turn. I know it finally started cooling off here,
Hmm.
in Charleston.
Yeah.
LA,
Same here.
who knows
Yeah.
when LA is gonna cool off? They just hit 121, highest temperature on record. But,
It's
uh,
crazy. Yeah.
as that weather starts to change, it's it's going to, that's when you're gonna see probably the second sort of the second round of challenges, and I feel for
Yeah.
them. But I also like, this is one of the things where social media has helped out. There was because restaurants were variously open or closed or doing delivery or not. There's a local restaurateur here. She just started a Facebook group and just announced, actually, I think yesterday or today, that they hit 30,000 people, which is a not insubstantial
Wow.
part of the population. And I have now learned about 100 different restaurants that I need to eat at
Nice.
before I die, because of all the reviews.
That's
And so
awesome.
social media, and then some of the commerce around it, around restaurants, and uh, that's enabled some of these businesses to stay open.
Curbside pickup, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it seems like the one like there's a local coffee shop in our town, really cool place. It's just a great place. They got indoor, they got outdoor. It's kid friendly. It's
Yeah.
college student friendly. It's just a real cool place, and they're just really smart with social media. They have really they just do everything really really well. And then they started to do some drive-through stuff and just have been very smart and effective about everything. And I think that the businesses that are really smart about all that stuff and are doing everything they can for delivery and curbside and all that kind of stuff are making it through, but you got to be pretty on top of all that, I think.
There's actually, I was NPR last night. There was an interesting segment. I think it was on All Things Considered. I think it was either that or Marketplace, but there's someone talking about wine windows in Florence. So what had happened was
What
there
happened was
back in the day, essentially the town leadership allowed the nobility that they're making their own wine, and they said, well, okay, we'll allow you to sell your wine. And so they created these specifically sized windows where they could sell their wine to someone like walking by. And but this window, I mean, the size was such that you could only put a flask of a certain size, because they didn't want like
okay.
barrels of wine going out. They wanted to control usage.
Oh, okay. Government regulation.
But then what happened was, when epidemics would hit, so like when the plague would roll through Florence, which Florence was, it's a big shipping depot, big commerce depot, and So it would get ravaged. But basically, then the commerce was actually benefited from these windows because it minimized contact from like shopkeeper to patron. And these windows, it's like there was a story they interviewed I think a gelateria. Um, and the one of the women in the from the family that runs it was saying, well, it was great, we had our wine window and it's just been boarded up for years. We just uncovered it and now we could like take the order, place the cup, and step away.
Nice.
I just
Yeah.
I kind of appreciated that that was something from the past, and from like we don't tend to think about epidemics and pandemics, certainly not in my lifetime.
Right.
And it's interesting that like that these problems have been solved before. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's important to reflect on lessons from the past, especially in commerce, because a lot of the
Right.
motivators and mechanisms are the same, even maybe if the media has changed.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's a really interesting sort of use case around commerce specifically, and it's interesting how some of the sort of infrastructure, like it's like we didn't quite realize which infrastructure was going to be useful for a pandemic, like remote work and curbside delivery and all those kinds of things that have their own purposes outside of a pandemic and stuff. And it
Yeah,
was like, oh wow, this is cool that this stuff has been maturing because it's quite useful. you know.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I'm pretty amazed at how um, it's robust and consistent, like Zoom, Blue Jeans, Slack. They've been, especially Slack, I know, have been pretty open about like their explosive growth.
oh, it's got to be
And
unbelievable.
but their stuff stayed online. Like they basically stayed up, and they've had to scale teams and do everything remotely like everyone else. And I think that's
I
pretty
mean,
phenomenal.
imagine if like Slack has obviously they'll go down for short periods of time, but like just imagine if Slack like was down for a week.
Well, I think
Like
some
that
people
would
would absolutely love that, but,
some people would definitely love it. But like that, I mean, it's like the amount of impact that would have on like the global economy.
well, and
Uh,
over time, as Slack does become like, certainly for the enterprises that are paying for it, as Slack becomes you know, there's a lot of institutional knowledge and decision making, like, history that's there in
yeah,
Slack. Like, I struggle to, like, try and put stuff in an email, for a decision that was made on Slack, but yeah, because I just try and make sure that I have one place to look something up, but very often,
right,
even if I find
right,
something that I need to say, like, "Why did we do that?" I have to go back to a Slack conversation and be like, "Ah, I see, that was the justification for that." And so that becomes, increasingly more important over time, that we
right,
do that.
right.
But then, and then I think
The
the other
single
people that are
source of knowledge across an organization. That's
yeah, the
super.
SSOK. Um, but and that kind of brings us, if we want to kind of close this out with some proper commerce content, um we can talk about what this has meant for certain merchants. I mean, for certain merchants, this pandemic and resulting economy have been a devastation. And then for many others, it's been like
Yeah,
Black Friday every week. I
right.
know my shopping is way up, um, compared to what it has been, and it's that yeah, 95% of that's been online.
Yep. Yeah, it's been an incredible shift in some areas of the economy really stimulated, some impacted real heavily. And it's yeah, dude, it's brutal, man. I mean, for a lot of people, it's just brutal.
Yeah,
And then, for those that aren't directly impacted, it's like you said, you just got to be grateful that you're fortunate, do what you can to support others, do what you can to support the economy.
yeah.
Um, Maybe buy some bobbleheads, keep the keep the bobblehead segment of the economy going.
Yeah, that's it's a weird commodity, but man, it's really popular.
One other thing I thought was really cool that I saw, we can probably maybe end on this. I know we're coming up on our time. I saw the Magento statistics portal
Oh
that
yeah,
was posted out recently, which looked really cool. It looks like it counts up statistics across GitHub contributions and things like that.
yeah. So we're using this application called Bitergia, and something that the um, community engineering team, which I'm now part of, um, they had found a while back at I think at OSCON, or one of the open source conferences, and yeah, be actually and just ended up becoming a really useful tool for us. We actually have a program that we're doing right now. um, we announced a partner relief, essentially a partner like COVID relief program, several months
Right.
ago.
Right.
And so Alexi teed it up, and I'm running that program now. But it's interesting because we were actually working with partner developers in a paid capacity, um, to to help, just help accelerate our roadmap, and deliver some features and try and get some stuff into certain releases that otherwise wouldn't have made it. And Bitergi has been as one of the tools that we use to track, because different projects are run in using different tools,
Mhm.
and it's been a nice way, a nice central place to collect everything. But yeah, the premise behind it is just that we have our open source stats, and we don't mind showing them, like assembling them and then putting them out there for everyone to see. That
Mhm.
kind of, showing our homework.
It's really cool, man. I'm just browsing this, and there's like a query builder. There's like all sorts of stuff that people can do to drill into all of this contribution data. So
Yeah, it's like Salesforce, but for developer analytics. I mean, I've barely scratched the surface of what it does myself.
nice, man. And yeah, that program that to for you guys to help finance partners and stuff like that is just brilliant. I mean, I just love
Yeah.
that on every level. Like we talked about how certain companies are doing really well, and then for you guys to take that and finance so that the partners don't have to let people go during this time, and at the same time you're building your core product and things like that is just it's
Well, the
brilliant.
yeah the real for me, the real advantage there is that, um, it, it's not just about keeping the lights on for partners. It's that these developers working in this space, they have a ton of relevant knowledge when it comes to Magento, and if they're going to be furloughed, I mean, they're going to have to find some work, and that might mean that they end up leaving the ecosystem, right? And that's just, if they can go learn something out, learn and do something else, but that means that we're losing that knowledge and experience from our ecosystem, and at
Yeah,
a time when I think we can ill afford to do that.
I love it. Ben Marks, thank you very much. It's been great to have you. And where can people best find you online?
So you can always pay attention to what we're doing. You can always pay attention to what we're doing um, at Magento Association is one of the places. So magentoassociation.org. If you are interested, if you're listening to this podcast, you should probably be a member. It's free. We try our best to send out some relevant content, but more than anything, we want your voice. You can always find me, Ben at magento.com, and then of course on the Twitter sphere, uh, uh, just blabbing on about all sorts of
TikTok as
things.
well. Are we on TikTok yet?
Nope, nope. I ain't messing with TikTok. Yeah, so I tried Instagram. I found the UI to be, or the UX to be, frustrating as hell. So
Same here. I
I
still don't get
I do Facebook. That's mostly kind of more personal stuff, and
personal and
then
stuff.
Twitter's where you'll see me, opining on Magento commerce and other stuff. So, I am in the um, I am working on something interesting for the market in India,
Okay,
a commerce focused event, but I'll share a little bit more details. The tentative time frame is going to be November or December, and yeah, I'll share more details. That's under the association,
cool.
but I'll share more details when I have them.
Awesome. Ben Marks, thank you, sir.